Hello and welcome to Greenboard Academy, where your interests are our interests, and our goal is to aid you in understanding concepts that will open your mind as well as nourish it. Today our topic will be on feedback and homeostasis, and we will be going over the definitions of each as well as types of feedback and examples as well as what organ systems are involved in feedback and regulation of homeostasis in the human body. Now, feedback is a response. It's really just a general word for a response that a computer can give, a living organism can give, anything really. But homeostasis is what we would call a living organism, whether it's a cell or a multicellular organism. It's its feedback mechanism. So it's a body or living organism's feedback. Now, homeostasis is important in two ways. One for the survival of the organism, and the other for identifying whether the organism is actually alive or not. To the organism, it's highly important, mainly due to the fact that the body or cell is highly dependent on a specific internal environment. With a little imbalance, many things can go wrong. And because of this, homeostasis is there to bring it back to a balance. Now, with the identification of a living organism, one of the 7 properties of life is the ability to have homeostasis. And without homeostasis, whether the organism reproduces and has order and evolutionary adaptation, it wouldn't work out because it doesn't have homeostasis. Now, there's 2 types of feedback that living organisms use. One is positive feedback, and the other is negative feedback. Now, positive feedback is when you would increase the unwanted stimulus or the unwanted condition that your body is in to change it and bring it back to the balance that it needs. Now, in human bodies, there's only 2 examples that you can find of that. One is with oxytocin regulation in the human body, and the other is with platelets. Now, we will go into platelets to see how it all works out. Now, imagine you were making a salad, and accidentally you happen to cut your finger while making the salad. Now, let's say your cut is very deep, you're bleeding, and your body realizes that it has too much blood loss at the time. So let's go to the cellular level and look at what's happening. Here we see a ruptured blood vessel, and we see red blood cells, maybe white blood cells, nutrients, good vital substances that the body has a lot of use for. So now what does the body do? It sends over platelets, or these substances that stick to the edges of the gap and start building walls around it to fill it up. Now they send a little platelet, and that platelet sends chemical signals to the brain, and from there the brain goes and increases blood flow, which is where we get into the positive feedback response, where we're increasing the bleeding, we're increasing all of the things we kind of want to stop. And what happens is that we have more bleeding, but more platelets arriving through the blood system to the area that needs to be fixed. And from there, the wound closes until it's completely shut off, and then the blood system is restored to normal, and everything can work smoothly and normally. On the other hand, negative feedback is the opposite to positive feedback. And this is mainly because negative feedback doesn't increase the unwanted stimulus by just increasing it till it's gone. It, in fact, tries to oppose it and cancel it out with its opposite. And this is what the body uses for homeostasis. In fact, it's the only one that is used for homeostasis. Positive feedback is not used for homeostasis. In fact, positive feedback is so uncommon that the only 2 examples that were listed are the only 2 human positive feedback mechanisms. Now, negative feedback can be seen in hypocalcemia, which is low blood calcium levels, as well as blood glucose regulation, which is regulation of your sugar blood levels. And this can be seen through its regulation with insulin as well as glucagon. Beyond these, there are many more examples, but for now, let's go straight into hypocalcemia. So as I mentioned, hypocalcemia is low blood calcium levels. And calcium is a very vital substance for many organ systems in the body. For instance, the nervous system finds it necessary for action potentials to be transmitted, or the muscular system finds it necessary for contractions. So without calcium, many things can go wrong. And blood is the number one way to send substances such as calcium throughout the body. Now, the stimulus or unwanted situation is sensed by a receptor. Now, this receptor sends a signal down the afferent pathway to the control center, and that will most likely be the brain. And from there, the brain will analyze the situation and respond accordingly. In this situation, the control center sends the signal to the parathyroid gland or the effector, and it will make parathyroid hormone. This signal will reach the bone as it travels down the afferent pathway with an E, and this will activate osteoclasts, that are bone dissolving cells, to dissolve bone to make soluble calcium ions. And so finally, the soluble calcium will go into the blood and the hypocalcemia will be brought back to normal. By doing these steps, the body can be in balance. Regulation of blood glucose works the same way. Insulin is used when you have high amounts of blood glucose levels and your body can't find a way to use it. So the control center sends down insulin to go and to find a way to get the glucose to be used or stored. The reverse is true for glucagon. Glucagon is used when you don't have a lot of glucose in your system. So let's say, for instance, you are fasting. You haven't eaten for a while and you don't have a lot of glucose in your blood. So what happens is that the control center activates glucagon to go and dissolve all the stored glucose in the body so that the glucose can be in the bloodstream and ready for usage. Now, when a lack of ability to maintain homeostasis is found, we call this a disease. Now, not all diseases are necessarily due to lack of homeostasis, for instance, Alzheimer's disease. Still, some diseases, for instance, diabetes, are due to lack of homeostasis. Remember, insulin was a key factor in homeostasis when blood glucose levels rose. Now, with an inability to use insulin, the person is unable to maintain homeostasis while having diabetes. The human body specifically has two organ systems that it uses for homeostasis, one being the nervous system and the other being the endocrine system. Now, the difference between these two is that the nervous system is the more quick and is kind of like an emergency responder. Now, the nervous system is quick, but the endocrine system is slow. It uses hormones or chemicals to relay signals and information to other parts of the body. Now, this travels through blood, so it's slower, but nonetheless, they both get used up for homeostasis. So don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment for better videos and more content.